The date is the 17th of April 2018. The time is 10 p.m. Location, in my armchair in the sitting room, relaxing, watching an episode of The Crown. My phone rings and I'm informally advised by a member of our group water scheme that we have a potentially very serious quality issue on our hands. That informal call, followed by a formal notification the following morning by Galway County Council, set in motion a train of events that has ultimately brought me here today talking to you about our scheme's journey to developing and implementing a quality assurance system which includes a water safety plan. Good morning. My name is Geraldine Taylor. I'm manager of the Kilconieron Group Water Scheme. Kilconieron Cooperative Society was established in 2008. Kilconieron was the result of the amalgamation of 4 former group water schemes, which came together in order to facilitate the building of a water treatment plant. We're a small scheme in a rural area of County Galway, located between Loughrea, Crockwell and Athenry. We have 180 members, 160 domestic connections. My opening statement is probably most scheme managers' nightmare scenario, but for us it was the beginning of a journey, which I will briefly outline here today. And as you can see on the thing here, it starts with the Crypt Iridium crisis in 2018. We learned lessons from that. We found we were quite exposed. We set ourselves objectives, and the major objective was to implement a very robust quality assurance system. I'll go through the actions we took in that and where we are now. So at this stage, I'd like to make 2 points. Point 1, quality assurance systems and water safety plans are not and never will be topics that are easy to present or to listen to. So I'll do my best to explain our experience as simple and concisely as possible. Point 2, prior to becoming manager of Kilconieron Group Water Scheme, I worked for a number of years in the medical device sector and was heavily involved in developing quality assurance systems and procedures. This experience obviously stood to me when it came to this specific situation. As outlined in my opening statement, I was contacted by a member of our scheme whose grandchild had tested positive for Crypt in Galway University Hospital. He told me that the doctor asked the parents who the water supplier was, as it was most likely the source of the problem. As some of you are well familiar at the moment, in this situation like this, you quickly find that you're on your own. It's assumed that there is a problem with the water and the onus is on the scheme to prove otherwise. In addition, you're presented with a scenario in which, if there was contamination in the water, we could be looking at multiple cases. At that particular time, a lot of people who I would normally call upon for assistance were out of the country on holidays. It was panic station. The following morning, I was waiting outside the Glenagua offices in Loughrea at 8 a.m. as the staff were arriving to work. I was there to check the plant performance data. I had with me boil water notices, which I had printed the night before in the event that they were needed. From that point onwards, motions were put in place to bring our backup water supply into action, should that be needed, and to complete water testing for crypto, but also standard microbial testing to check for indicators, as the crypto test takes a long time. At 9:30 that morning, the drama started, with a call from Galway County Council to inform me of the potential cryptosporidium outbreak. This was followed by inquiries from HSE, Department of Environment, etc., and there were constant demands for information updates. The whole process drags out, particularly when cryptosporidium is concerned. It took almost 3 weeks before we were in a position where we could prove that we did not have cryptosporidium in our water source. Following that, we decided that we needed to learn lessons from all of this. And in doing so, we reviewed the whole process in an effort to identify what we needed to do to ensure that if it ever happened again, we were going to be better prepared. So we set ourselves out, we decided to develop a new robust quality assurance system and in doing so we set ourselves 5 objectives that we needed to meet. We agreed that it must be in compliance with all known regulatory requirements, that it should include documentation control, that it should be structured in a way that works for us and would afford us some form of protection in a time of crisis, and it had to be efficient and easy to maintain. Now, when we say we would meet all regulatory requirements, that's where we first became aware of a water safety plan. So I didn't know what a water safety plan was. There was no guidance out there at the time in terms of what it should contain or how a scheme would go about developing one. I spoke with numerous organisations in Ireland at the time, but had no success in finding what I was looking for. As one of our clear objectives from the start here was to meet all known regulatory requirements, we were adamant that we were not going to put a quality assurance system in place without a safety plan. So we had to go looking further. So in order to get the information I needed to develop a water safety plan, I contacted private water companies in the UK and Holland, both of which are leaders in the field in Europe in terms of water regulatory compliance. After discussions at length with those experts, to whom I'm grateful, a keen understanding of the benefits of a water safety plan was relayed to me from people who worked the system themselves. From that I gained a whole new insight into how this should be structured, such that it would provide us with all the safeguards we needed to ensure that the finished quality assurance system was robust and would ensure protection in any water crisis. I was very fortunate to have availed of that resource. Where does the water safety plan fit in the overall quality assurance system? I will go on further to talk about the water safety plan, and it becomes the basis of the entire system. Everything is built off it. Your whole structure for your quality assurance system builds from there. So we can go into more detail here. This is an example of some of the things we do with water safety. But I'm just going back to the water safety plan here. What is it? It's as important here to point out what a water safety plan is not as what it is. I initially thought it was something like a safety statement or some kind of statement on water safety that would be largely generic, and it could be easily adapted to our scheme. I thought if I got a copy of a water safety plan from either of the companies in the UK or Holland, that I could take that, modify it, and I'd have what I needed. However, I quickly realised that a water safety plan is very scheme specific. It's an in-depth and detailed study of the entire process from source to tap. It involves 2 entities, the Group Water Scheme and the treatment plant contractor, as each of them have direct responsibility for different aspects of the overall process, and the plan must be developed as such. The risks associated with each raw water source vary greatly. A lot depends on the raw water source and what are the historical factors that can present a risk to the treatment plant and consequently to the water quality. In assessing risk, historical data is very important. The events that have affected your water supply in the past will influence your decision-making process in relation to the development of a water safety plan. All risks are rated in terms of frequency and severity. For example, if following a bad storm where there is a lot of surface water, what effect that might have on your water source. For all risks identified, you must list the processes in place to mitigate against that risk and re-evaluate each risk, taking into account the mitigating factors that are in place within your process. Water safety benefits. The benefits of a water safety plan. Unlike a lot of other regulatory requirements, there are real benefits to having a water safety plan, which really become apparent in a time of crisis. You can rely upon it to quickly identify key performance indicators, and it gives great guidance in identifying the potential problem areas which need to be assessed quickly in order to establish if you have an issue. In addition, it demonstrates the effectiveness of your quality assurance system that you have in place. In Holland and the UK, the water safety plan is the go-to document in any time of water crisis over there. So The water safety plan and the quality assurance system it supports are all live documents which need to be reviewed and updated regularly. This is just an example here of the water safety plan. Is about 30 pages. I just gave some examples just to highlight that it starts, if you see what's indicated in green there, it starts at your very source. It describes your whole process in your treatment, and then it goes to your distribution network. So that's what that is. It's just, you have to actually put in a graph describing your whole process. That's a sheet that kind of indicates the method in which you assess your risks. There's different methodologies you can use, but this is the one that we have chosen. And you evaluate each risk in terms of its potential severity, if it happens, and the frequency in which it happens. And as I said earlier, after you've identified all your risks, then you go and you look at the mitigating factors that are in place, and then you reevaluate based on the mitigating factors. So there's a kind of a process involved in it. Now, okay, the next thing I'm going to talk about is documentation control. I see you're all going to be excited about this. Anyway, we built a quality assurance system which included documentation from the control from the start. It's important to point out that documentation control is not a regulatory requirement, but I would highly recommend it. It's not difficult to implement or maintain, and it keeps your documentation in order. Documentation control means that all procedures are numbered, approved, revised, and filed following a set pattern. In our case, most all the procedures have attached forms which are used to record data relating to each particular task. We went for a tick box initials type system because it's the easiest and most efficient to maintain. It also includes documentation change control, which provides an efficient and controlled method of revising your procedures or forms. I'm just going to show you an example of, if you can see that, all our procedures are done in this way. If you look at the box on the very top, it just describes what the procedure is, but you can see that each procedure, every page of each procedure is signed by our secretary and chairperson. And once those procedures have been approved, the effective date is from that date. All the procedures outline the purpose, background, scope, section, responsibility, and then we go on into the description of the procedures. It might seem a bit heavy, but it just keeps the whole thing very neat. If I needed to revise that procedure, I have a form. Instead of writing another procedure, I just write a form and say what I want to change on it, get it approved again, secretary, chairman, go back and make the change and give it a new revision number. You can see the revision numbers are up there. So it keeps it very tight, and it keeps it controlled, and it just, when you get used to using it, it's actually very easy to do because we've structured our forms in such a way that I'll show you when I come to a form, you can't forget. It triggers you. You have to tick a box, you have to put in initials. So everything has the same format and all the same information is included. This, for example, is our flushing report. Now, what you see up there is the form for the procedure that was before it. You can see there's some initials there on the right where there's the prep work is done, and we just initial it to say that it's done, put in the time. Down at the bottom you'll see a graph. This is a high pressure flushing, and you can see the two peaks there when the high pressure is on the lines. And you can see the line is the spec, and when you see the other line, that's when you're back in spec, and that's when we stop. We've taken 11 samples along the course of that. All our flushing reports are presented in that way. We have the chlorine, we have the turbidity, we have the times, we have everything. But an awful lot of that information on every one of them is already contained on the form. So it makes it very easy, you know, when you get used to it. Let's see now. Yeah, that's another thing we attach to our flushing form. We attach a section, a piece of our map, and you can just see there that we have highlighted the section that was flushed. That would have been attached to the form that you saw before that, which just ties up for everybody what section is flushed at any time. We have two methods of flushing. One is regular flushing and one is high pressure flushing. We do the regular flushing as required or as we see fit. The high pressure, we take a section each year. work out from the treatment plant in that way. Okay. So where are we now in relation to the objectives that we set out to achieve? We have developed a new quality system. It is in compliance with all known regulatory requirements because it does include a water safety plan. It includes documentation control. It works for us, and that's the most important thing, I think, because everybody is doing what they're supposed to be doing in a different way. We were always doing chlorine testing, we were doing flushing, but it just wasn't presented or controlled in the manner in which it is now. It just ties the whole thing together and it keeps it really neat. That's the only difference. And when I say it works for us, everyone has their own way of working, but to put a bit of structure and format around that makes all the difference in the world. With the system that we have in place now, we feel that it really gives us protection in times of crisis. And it's efficient and easy to maintain. As I described, an awful lot of the work is done initially with the procedures and forms. It becomes tick box after that. So it is easy to maintain, and it is efficient as well. Just in conclusion, then, I would just like to say that the quality assurance system that we now have in place is based on the overall view and interlinks all parts of the process. This was triggered by the development of the water safety plan. The water safety plan starts at the source and ends at the tap. Our quality assurance procedures were largely based on our responsibility or our element of the overall process. But through bringing the water safety plan in and building that into the quality assurance, we now look on the whole process under our quality assurance system. The information that's sent to us monthly from our contractors, it all comes under the one quality assurance system now. And if I can just go back and I'll show you a slide here. The water safety plan here is the base for it. On top, before we built the procedures, we built a quality inspection plan. A quality inspection plan is where we look at all of the inspections that go on. Our inspections on the distribution network, the contractors' inspections in the treatment plant, and the quality of the raw water. We look at everything, and we have an inspection plan that shows we don't hold all the information. Some of that is held in Glenagua, some of it is contained in monthly reports. But on our inspection plan, we refer to where all of that is located. So in the event of an audit or any kind of inspection where you want to target anything, we have an exact location listed for all that. That's your quality inspection plan. We also specify on the quality inspection plan the frequencies of all the inspections. And then built from the quality inspection plan there, then we built individual procedures for whatever. I think we have something like 12 or 13 procedures now. We basically put everything in procedure format, from your chlorine residual testing, your turbidity testing, everything we did, flushing, we put a procedure around everything. We put a form with every procedure. So our filing system now is a series of files that have forms just like the one I showed you. But they're all signed and approved and dated, and the data is all there. So you can file it away, you can put it away, it's done. And that's the difference with documentation control or not having it. So it is something that I find to be very good anyway. So what has this done for us? It has completely changed the dynamic in relation to water quality events. If some serious event were to occur that brings the quality of our supply into question, what would I do now as opposed to in 2018? Following the guidance of the Water Safety Plan, I can now pinpoint the areas within the process that need to be reviewed and quickly identify the performance indicators. If the process has operated within specification and without deviation, then I can confirm that we do not have the contaminant in our water supply. In addition, I can provide the relevant documentation to support that position. Now, we learned a lot with developing this Water Safety Plan, and we were lucky probably in that the information was not available here and we were forced to go to England and Holland. And at that time then you got speaking to people who really lived that. They worked it. And they set it up in a way that worked for them. So we learned a lot from them. And we put that in ourselves. So now, if I had a crypto crisis in the morning, as opposed to back in 2018, before we learned all of this information and lined it up, I know now that I would just have to go and review the UV data for the last month, look at the intensity, look at the process in terms of the pumps were always on before the UV was on. And I can be assured at that point in time that if there is crypto in our water, it's dead. I didn't have that knowledge or understanding before we went through the water safety plan. So what it does is it gives you that confidence, and we all have really good, validated, very, very, very good designed plans. You know, most of us that get a scare in terms of water quality, it turns out we don't actually have that problem, but you have to go through the hoops to find that. So by doing a water safety plan, it develops your own confidence in your own system, and there are very good processes that's in place. And it just kind of brings that to light, and it brings it all together. So for us, that was the outcome, that it changed the position of doubt and fright and worry to, okay, let's look at the key factors in relation to whatever the issue is. What's it looking like? If it's looking okay, you have. If it's not, obviously you have to go about it, but you get that early indication. While nothing can eliminate the very real concern around a 10 p.m. water safety phone call at night, at least now I have the reassurance of having a water safety plan and quality assurance system in place that will direct our responses with confidence and control in any given situation. Thank you.